Welcome to Grace in the Grind. We're here to empower, to encourage, and to equip Christian entrepreneurs to do all that God has called them to. And today, my guest and a really good friend of mine, Jennifer Bennett, she's here from Get Desky, and I'm just grateful that you're here to have a conversation with me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
So, with that being said, you are the best expert of you. Why don't you give us like a quick intro to who you are and what you do?
Oh man, I do so many things. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, and I'm a third generation woman entrepreneur. But if I'm being totally honest, probably my favorite hat to wear is wife and mom.
Sweet. Now, what about you saying third generation entrepreneur? What is that and what does that look like?
Yeah, so I am a third generation woman entrepreneur. That means that my grandmother actually owned businesses before it was totally legal in the United States to own businesses.
So when she said when you she so it was illegal to own businesses, what business did she have first and
She
foremost?
had bars in Houston. So the establishment itself was not illegal. It's the right for women to own a business was not legal in the United States until the 1980s. And she owned these in from the 60s through the 90s.
Okay, so she owned bars in Houston, 60s, 90s. Women were illegal to have those things. So second generation would have been your mother? Did she
My
take over
mother,
those
yeah.
bars?
No, she helped run them when she was in high school. However, my parents have a consulting firm where they helped build power plants. And so she was remote work before remote work was cool. My dad would travel the world and build power plants, and my mom would run the business side, like the admin stuff, the books, and things like that while she was at home mothering me as well.
Okay, so this is interesting. So you have the illegal grandma, like she's has an illegal business, which is actually
It was,
super cool.
well, technically was not illegal. It was just women had to have men on the documents to be able to own them. And her bars were not illegal per se.
Per
So
se.
she was not doing anything illegal, but legally a woman could not 100% own a business until the 1980s. So the
Make
business
it
itself was legal to
right.
have, legal to operate, things like that. So I don't want y'all to think like my grandmother was a criminal. She
Yeah,
was
I don't want them to think that either, but I find that fascinating. So your grandmother was in there, which is like awesome because that's pretty cool and very like a rebellious thing. I love that. That's she's like a new hero. And then mom did administration while your dad did power plant consultation. So what inspired you in all these stories to really get into entrepreneurship?
so what inspired me was actually through my own struggles. I started doing real estate when I was 23. And so many real estate business owners, when they first start out, like they don't quote unquote tell you're a business owner. But my mom kept subtly saying, Jen, you're a business owner. Like you're a 1099, you're a business owner. Don't let them like try to split hairs with you. You're a business owner. And so it took me essentially working three jobs for two of which were by my previous broker to literally work myself to death to then be like, I can just run my own company. At the time, I was pretty much helping him run a brokerage. I was doing deals myself, and then I was helping his business partner, create all these ads for all of these different people all over the world. And so I essentially was around all of these business owners all the time, even as a kid. And so it finally just dawned on me. My mother was like, can we just start something already? Like, literally, you're working yourself to death and you're not going anywhere. And so I think in Christmas, around Christmas time of 2020, we finally sat down and we were like, okay, what are we going to name this? What are we going to do with this? And we really launched it out there. For the first little bit, I'd say probably for the first 3 months, my mom hated the name Get Desky, but it just essentially has grown on her. And now, like, we absolutely love it. We have multiple different ways that we help business owners, and we get to go and travel around and meet all these really cool people and do some really cool things with our clients.
So let's dig into that for a second because I want to make sure that the audience doesn't miss because what was just said was I was a real estate agent at 23, wanted to start something and then went into Get Desky. So let's take a moment and just to explain to the audience what Get really is.
So Get Desky does two different things. So it teaches entrepreneurs how to automate some of their prospecting, which we have a tool for that. And then we also teach entrepreneurs how to automate and set themselves up to be operationally free until they get to the part to where they need other people in their business to operate certain things. Because yes, tools are powerful. Yes, you can automate a lot, but you still do need manpower once you get to a certain level to run it. So the other side of that is we will actually come in and be your fractional manager and your staff for that altogether. So it's taking the best of fractional management and the best of VA staffing and meshing them together.
Okay, so how did you go from real estate to this?
Well, that journey took me about 16 years. So
Okay.
it took me years to my mom hitting me over the head with a frying pan and being like, you're working yourself to death and you're turning into an alcoholic, to being like, hey, let's do that. Along the way, I learned, as you do, you get to be really efficient when you're running three different companies all at the same time while also being a wife and a mom. During that time, my husband was also traveling. So I had to learn how to be exceedingly efficient with every minute of my day. And what came out of that was me being able to be hyper efficient to where most entrepreneurs are not. Because a lot of the entrepreneurs that I meet, they're like, oh, I got this new thing and I'm going to learn about it. And I'm like, why? Because I need to do it myself. Why? And at some point, you do need to know so that you're enough to be able to know if the person you're hiring or the person that you're doing is doing what they should be doing, but only to the sense of that they're executing it to what you're doing. You don't need to know the intricate details and all the features and all the different things that your CRM does. You don't even need to know all the features that Slack does. You don't need to know all the features of all these things. That's literally taking up bandwidth for where you can go out and do the best thing of you.
That's brilliant. That's awesome. I love how you put that you had 3 companies, a traveling husband, some kids, and you're becoming super efficient. That alone, I want to take a second and honor you for being an incredible woman entrepreneur who is doing these things and managing the behind the scenes stuff. Because a lot of people will pick and choose whether it's managing behind the scenes or being upfront, and you were able to balance the two. So first and foremost, I want to honor that and honor you in that. This brings me to a question too, and I think this is going to be super beneficial for our listeners. It took you 16 years to do what you're doing. What was preventing you from jumping?
Long story short, imposter syndrome. When I was growing up, I was fortunate enough to have parents that allowed me to be in that inner circle. A lot of parents, even in the entrepreneur space, when there was this kind of separation between family life and business life. And my dad really did not like that. Anytime we would come and we would visit him when we were out of school and stuff like that, and the VPs or whoever else would be there, my dad was like, okay, that's fine. I can go to this, but my wife and my daughter is coming too. There was no separation in that instance. I got to go to a lot of the plants and see some of the stuff that was happening there, some of the stuff they were building or rebuilding or whatever, planning, all sorts of different phases. And so I really got to see behind the veil. But the other thing that did is this is no fault to him, is it made it to where his shadow got cast really big. And for the longest time, it takes you a little bit of time to realize that you can create your own shadow. And so it just took a while it was literally my mom was like kicking me to the curb of, you've got more info and more knowledge and more things than you think you do. You need to get out there and you need to share it.
And so imposter syndrome, dad casting a big shadow. At what point was the revelation that you said, I need to get out of this shadow? And then how did you actually get out of that?
So what really the tipping point for me is that the two guys that I was working for, that I was essentially working under, I was helping them manage and grow their business and operating it. They were starting another company and they didn't want me to be a partner in it. They essentially told me that they didn't know me well enough and they didn't know that if I would be a good business partner. And so that kind of was the tipping point of, hold on, I'm giving my life away essentially for these two that don't appreciate me enough to know what I'm actually doing for them. And so that was the first like real taste of that. They tried to later on say they were sorry and give me a feel good one, but at that point the seed had already been sown. And so I separated from them.
Mm. So with that being said, then this brings up two lines of questioning I have. And one of, how did you navigate, or what were some of the challenges of being a woman in business? Because you had a lot of great exposure to a lot of these circles. You're a woman, you're in business. What were some of those challenges you faced that may not typically be talked about?
So one of the things is the society. So growing up in the society that I grew up in, we were girls were always subtly pushed towards two different things. You could either be a really good wife and a homemaker was how they put it, which meant you stayed at home, you managed the home, and then you took care of the kids. You did all of that. You could be really great at that, or you could go down the career path, like build your career and then do your family and all that stuff later. But there really was no line of like, you can do both of them at the same time. And that was something that I also struggled with a little bit, was trying to do both at the same time. But then when I was sitting down and I was really writing my story, I realized that I did both of those at the same time. My oldest, who's now 19, who will be launching her business probably in the next year, is she was 3 when I got my real estate license.
Okay.
I was already a wife and a mom at that time, and I did those. I did all of them together, and I would take my kid and I would literally tell her, "Okay, you have to sit under my cubicle while I do office time," because that's what was required of the brokerage that I started out with. Was I had to do desk time or office time. Basically, any of the calls that came into the office, I could take those, and they were my leads. And I was like, here's a little portable DVD player. Here is a coloring book. And I use the mom voice of, you better not make any noise, distract anybody else. You have to stay under my cubicle. Here's all your stuff. We're here. And I did that for a long time. And so navigated doing both of those at the same time. And so I just learned that I had to just be able to solve problems. I couldn't just look at a problem. And as I tell both of my girls today, you need to build a bridge, not a brick wall. If
Mm.
you see a problem, you build a bridge over it. You don't put up a brick wall and say, okay, I can't get through this. You build a bridge to get over it. And it really comes down to that, is how many times do you see an obstacle and you say, I can't do that? Instead of saying, okay, how can I go around it? How can I go over it? How can I go under it? How can I navigate through it? And that really allowed me to open my eyes to what was actually really possible.
At what point did you find, did you wake up and say, wow, I've had some success? Like you were really able to recognize your own success? Was there a point in that in time that happened?
It has came several times in several different ways. But one of the first times that I really sat down and thought about it was it was still when I was doing real estate. Was I had a broker from Houston, which is only 2 hours from me, call me and says, hey, I think I met you one time, one somewhere, and my cousin wants to buy a rental house for her son in College Station. You should help them. And she called me, and she's since referred several people to me. My license is inactive now. And I still all the time just get people every once in a while that want real estate help. And so it's a nice reminder of all the different people that I sowed seeds into of helping. I have past clients that are come back to me and they're like, hey, my daughter wants to buy a house now. And I'm like, I can't, but my friend can. And so I think that was the first time that I really realized the power also of just doing right by people, not being nice to people, but actually full stop doing right by people. And that sometimes means that the people may not actually know that you're doing right by them in that moment. One of the things that I always told my daughter is, I don't mind being the bad guy right now so that I can be the good guy later.
That's really powerful. So then with that being said, so you're recognizing success, you've overcome challenges, you have a moniker of really good success as a female in entrepreneur and a mom and a wife and all these things. You had mentioned earlier that your mom had told you don't become an alcoholic. So can you unpack that a little bit more? Like,
Towards the end, when I was running those 3 companies at the same time, the stress of having to run multiple of those companies, we always go to some sort of coping mechanism.
mhm,
And my husband, because he's just the good guy he is, and he knew that I loved margaritas, he would make them for me when he was there, and it would be pitchers, not small ones, like the big 2-liter ones. And it got to a point to where I was drinking a lot of those. And it was mainly due to the stress of running the companies. My family life, for the most part, is pretty good. I have a husband that if I tell him I want steak and potatoes for dinner, you can bet your bottom dollar it doesn't matter if he's going to work 15 hours. I'm going to have steak and potatoes. Not because I'm, that demanding, but that's just because that's the level of love that he has for me.
mm,
And my mom was like, she pretty much knew the writing on the wall also too of these people don't see the full value that you have and that you can give to someone. And so that was that part too of knowing that she was right and she had to let me go through that. So it's one of those things. You have to let people, if you tell somebody something and they don't really listen, but you're seeing the writing on the wall, sometimes you have to let them go through that and then support them.
that's really good. So like dealing with stress with alcohol, margaritas. How have you grown in your ability to deal with stress now?
So now I actually have a safeguard. So I love boundaries. It's one of the things I know you and I had connected on multiple times of like I have healthy boundaries now. One of them is if I have high emotions in any direction, I don't even drink alcohol. So even if I were to sign my highest paying client tomorrow, I would not say, hey, let's go pop open some champagne or something like that. And let's go have margaritas. Let's go drink a beer. I actually won't do that on a high or a low or stress or anything like that. Some of the other things that I do is I actually just detach myself from the situation. So will fully walk away, like I'll shut down and I'll come back tomorrow. I think we limit ourselves in our ability to relieve stress when we allow ourselves to sit there and stew instead of receiving the emotions, letting them be like hi, waving them as they pass by, and then letting them go.
That's good. That's really good. So then what would you say to somebody coming up? Like just say some of our listeners are young adults, 20s, and they're just coming up. What are some of the advice you would give them looking back as the successful one who's been through a lot? What are some pieces of advice you would give them starting out?
Don't give up. Sometimes your mother is more right than you care to admit. And that doesn't mean that it's your actual physical mother, but it can be that maternal person that
Right.
is like a mother to you. That if they're saying, Jim, hey, dude, like really think about this, maybe you do need to sit down and you really do need to think about it. I don't want to say moms are always right, but
They're pretty close. If you have a good
pretty,
mom. Yeah, if you have a good
yeah,
mom, they're pretty close.
yeah. And then you're never too old to learn something new. My mom is 3 and she helps me manage my Facebook group. I'm teaching her how to manage my local Facebook group that I have that has almost 27,000 people in it. So you're never too old to learn something new to take yourself to the next level.
That's incredible that she's helping manage a 27,000 member Facebook group as an older lady. That is incredible. That's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. So yeah, definitely not too old to learn anything. So being teachable, I think, is a huge thing. So what is the vision you have? So we've gone through a lot of different things, and as we start landing the plane of this particular episode, the past, what you've been doing, what you're currently doing, what is the vision for your future for Get Desky for whatever you're looking at in the next 5 to 10 years? What is it that you're wanting to accomplish or the impact you're trying to make?
I have a few different things. So one, I just launched the Inner Circle. And the vision for that is there's so many entrepreneurs that they need help at the very beginning to just set up their business to where it will actually run on the backside without them having to manually do so many things. And a lot of people don't know all the tools that are available to them. And then they don't know that they can manipulate them. And so I want to give that to them. I want them to have the knowledge and the expertise that I have in bite-sized ways. Speaking 7 times next year, which is really interesting because for the last 20 years, I did not public speak at all from a really just random, weird, coincidental thing that happened a long time ago. So next year, I'm going to be sharing a lot of my secrets, a lot of my knowledge, and not just knowledge that I gained from my own experiences, but knowledge that I gained from my grandmother, who has since passed, my dad, and some of his friends. I've had some of the most epic experiences from my dad's friends to this day that I wouldn't have been able to have if I hadn't have had my dad build those relationships with people. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of different secrets that are gatekept a lot, and it's going to be really interesting to see. And I'm also writing 2 more books.
Oh, 2 more books. How many books have you written?
I have written 2 books. So I have one that's called Elevate Your Influence, the digital guide to ambitious entrepreneurs. And then I have the hiring guide.
So to the listener, we just want to make a brief moment to tell you all of that stuff we will link in the show notes to make it super easy for you to go grab. I highly recommend that you go grab the books. I've known Jennifer for a little while now. I even joined her inner circle. And so because I'm excited to be part of this. And so I want you guys to check it out too. So with that being said, how do people find you?
They can find me what is it? It's Jennifer Bennett, my link in my bio. So you can find that on Facebook. So I have it, I think it's, what is it? www.getdesk.com/Jennifer link in bio. And I'll send it to you guys and we can post it below because that'll have all of my free resources. You can get a free 15-minute crash course with me. It'll have the link to my books. It'll have the link to my inner circle, all the ways that you can connect with me as well.
Awesome. And as a side note, we will link that all in the show notes for you guys for quick and easy access. Now, this is the part of the show as we start landing this plane where I ask my guests, if you've listened to the show for any length of time or at least more than one episode, that we do a hashtag wisdom bomb. And if you follow me at Lead with Jim on Facebook, you will see them all. I do one just about every day. And they're just little nuggets of wisdom that says, hey, this is something you can use in your life, like a portable truth to take it out and use it now. So with that being said, I ask every guest to drop a wisdom bomb for our listeners. So if you would be ever so kind, what kind of wisdom bomb would you give us today?
I have a note of wisdom bombs, just so you know. I know I keep them just because of that. And I posted this one recently. It says, but building an empire without joy is just existing.
Ooh, say that one more time.
Building an empire without joy is just existing.
That hurts because how many people out there are building and not enjoying what they're building? Oh, that one's a hard one. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. And guys, for you guys who are listening, make sure as a friend of the show, make sure you go and rate, review this. And I just want to remind you that we are here on Grace in the Grind to help the Christian entrepreneur to be equipped, to empower, and to encourage to do all that God's created you to do and to get you out into the world and actually make the impact that you're here and wired to do. And Jennifer, I just want to thank you for being on the show today. It was such a wonderful conversation. And to the audience, thank you for listening and hanging out with us to this point. So with that being said, make sure you go ahead and check out some of the other episodes.
This has been Grace in the Grind. Whether you're a Christian leader looking for guidance or an entrepreneur seeking inspiration, it's Jim's passion to equip and encourage you. Make sure to check out Jim's solo episodes, where he shares practical leadership insights grounded in a biblical perspective. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on social media at Lead with Jim. And you can also hit the website at www.leadwithjim.com. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time on Grace in the Grind.